Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to everyone for you guys' words, prayers, and your amazing support. Se los agradezco mucho. I appreciate every one of you. Now, to get into the story in hand, tonight I'll put a little bit of the base so that my story is a little bit more understood as I continue. Which I'm gonna do a little profile today on the Beltranes, as I should have been continuing, right? But anyways, as you guys know my story, I was leaving Sonora and getting back here, right, to Culiacan. But I wanted to touch a little bit on the hermanos, the Beltranes, just so that everybody has a better understanding of them, right? And cause as I was heading back, I know that there was still a lot of backlash left, right, to deal with. But anyways, I know a lot of people know about the main individual, right, which is Arturo, as he was referred for, I don't know, a lot of years, right, as Botas Blancas or Jefe de Jefes. A lot of people don't really pay a lot of mind to this individual, but he was one of the beginners, right, at least when it came to them names that people are used to hearing. But he was just one of the many families that would end up making what was described by Popo, right, as the Cartel of Sinaloa, which here is not recognized as that, but nevertheless, it's what how people know him. He was a long distance cousins of a Chapo. They come from the same area, up in the mountains, and for those that are aware of the surroundings, it's just what it is, right? Up there in the Sierra, it's just grass and goma, right? That's what you gotta make a living of. But nevertheless, they started as my grandpa started. My grandpa started in the military, and well, he started doing his thing, from the sidelines, cause he wanted to make feria, which that's I think the main goal out of anybody, right? Power comes later as money starts coming in. But anyways, at the time there was no such thing as carteles or none of that BS. It was just basically buying grass, goma, and finding people, to buy it. In them days, you hardly heard of soda and cheese out here, that came later with Michoacan and Nacho Coronel and them, But anyways, I don't want to get off topic, Within time, they made what was called La Federación, which was from every angle, right? With the exception of Golfo. They never wanted to join and if they did, they pulled out whenever, as far as I know. And within time, you guys know that main Theo got arrested and Amado Carrillo took over, right? Señor de los Cielos. And which two main gatilleros were, two of the main ones were Chapo and Arturo Beltran. Again, they were relatives to some extent, right? I don't know. It gets weird, right? But anyways, they were out there doing their thing, and it's around the time where now Chapo gets arrested the first time. And the reason why I'm going so back into it, so you guys know that the break, right? Where you get a sense of it. But anyways, while he was in jail, his brother Pollo to go. Well, his brother was doing the ones that were really running everything and was giving Chapo or gave Chapo that much power, right? What's Arturo? He was supporting him, helping his brother control whatever little angles he had uh, down here, because again, they were real close, right? As you guys know, Amado ended up supposedly going and, you know, Chapo basically seeing the rope around his neck and going to the States, and Arturo and many others helped him punch out, right, from Jalisco. And as he got out, they basically made their own little thing. So when you started hearing this, the Sinaloa cartel a lot, right, for a lot of different angles, the same time, and Mayo was pulling back because of run-ins with the Aretes, and the open war with Arturo, Azul, all them was already open with Golfo, right? Because again, they had a lot of differences, and nevertheless, everybody was from the States, so they came back and they made a federation out here, which is nothing of families, which I will continue on profiles of those who I can profile, right? Because they ain't here, or they're washed up already, whatever. But anyways, Sinaloa is never known as that, right? There's many, 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 many families out here. When I speak about my families, because I speak about my personal stuff, but in reality, there's way too many, I know a lot of people are hearing the Mayos, the Zambadas, the Guzmanes, the Beltranes, but as you guys will see, there's it's a lot. But anyways, that's not important in this one, no. As they founded this, Azul, Mayo, all them, they started bringing in soda. With soda came different type of power, right? There was many that at the time they didn't want to mess with it, and that includes my abuelo, my jefe, right? But nevertheless, they would eventually fall in line. But at the time, it was something not understood completely. If you guys get what I'm trying to say out here, out here was more grass and goma, right? But anyways, they ended up forming their little crew, as there's always crews among something. And in that small crew, right, that they were in reality, the faces of out here, the main dudes, just picture this, the main dudes, they were el brazo armado, the strong arm of everybody out here, were the Beltranes. That's what they would do. They did, besides all that extra stuff. You know, so I want to talk about a camarada right from Bell. He he went out here as Epi, but that wasn't his placazo, right? Rest in peace, Crow. But anyways, he was the first one to open everything and anything out here. As I mentioned, the Beltranes had I forgot what they were called, pelones or something to that extent, right? No, that came later. Los Negros, I believe. But anyways, they were the crash crew. They did the pointing, right? Went in here, set governments. That was their thing. They paid governments to get in line. That's how they had Genaro Luna and all of them under them. It was Arturo. It wasn't El Mayo, it wasn't El Chapo, as people tend to speak it. It was Arturo Guzman. You see, up to this point, these individuals were were up there, not just in power, but in not mining, spending feria to make feria, right? By paying municipales, estatales, federales. At that time, it was a AFI, all that thing. But anyways, that's how they had states under them, like Morelos. They had Acapulco. They had oh, for those that don't know, nowadays there's what 15 at least different small cartels that came out of the Beltranes, right? But anyways, the main dude that used to move finanzas, which was paying plazas, right? Like I mentioned, politicos and gobierno XXX, For example, they had a governor and primer coronel in Nayarit, right? They were paying, so they were stashing stuff inside the military. That's how much power they had. But anyways, when in time the main dude paying everybody out, Arturo did all the lacing up and boogieing type of stuff, right? And El Mochomo did all the meetings and paying and XX things, right? And they were the two important individuals. And I don't know exactly what year, but it's when Chapo's son, the cat you see nowadays, destroying everything, right? Well, one of them got arrested for speeding or some stuff, like some funny stuff, right? He just being a junior, I guess. But anyways, they were gonna extradite him, and it's when everything started going bad. And they can sugarcoat it in 1,000 different ways, but the first one that betrayed was El Chapo. However you paint it, you sugarcoat it. By this time, even though they were long distance cousins, El Mochomo married a cousin, a niece, I believe, of El Chapo. Like I said, it gets weird, but they were more united as one, right? Again, they held El Chapo to get whatever power he had, but to him, his son was more important, so he turned in El Mochomo. It's not a maybe, it's not, he did it to the dot, right? And it's when Arturo personally got offended and he went to war. And it wasn't this little war, because again, the Beltranes had governments, state. Everybody that was underpaid for Sinaloa, they were doing the paying, so they answered to them. But you see, money corrupts, right? And it's when Garcia Luna started doing his BS and going behind Arturo and betraying, and Navarro started working with Popo, as they all do. Because at one point, not by one, but by many, I heard that everybody feared Navarro, right? They knew he was coming in to hit with the pelones, and everybody didn't want no part of it. He actually was the one that killed the homie Crow, or Epi, right? As he went by out here, that opened that door. At first, it was camaradas that were out here. We were just pointers. We opened canchas with the Beltranes. It is why I despise of the Beltranes against homies, right? Bad. As you guys know my story, when I hit the P and they had the Pinta, right? We have it bad after that. Cause of the homie Crow, right? From Bell. They gave him the decision to either ride with Beltranes or stay put with El Chapo, and he stood put. So that basically defined everything amongst us, right? But anyways, to not make it too long, it was a war like not seen. But up until this point, it was Beltranes were right to the dot, right? They got betrayed and they bucked up and were handling business. Not just here, but Nayarit, Morelos, they had an war wherever. But anyways, it's when people start taking advantage of situations and it gets ugly, right? For example, the next move Arturo do is he does a pact with one that was considered the worst trash in Mexico, which were the last letter, right? They start doing funny stuff like picking up families, kids, lining up kids and killing them. But I won't go into details, but you guys can imagine, and a lot of people put the death of El Chapo's son to the Beltranes, right? Like they went and did it, but no. See, there was another individual in the shadows waiting to move, which was El Mayo. He sent El Macho Pietro to take out El Chapo's son. It don't come out on the news, but out here it's well known that El Macho Prieto got raided in and he checked with El Mayo that it was Guzman's son and he gave the code to go ahead and boogie on him. You know? But again, for whatever reason, El Chapo looked past that. But and then it became obvious from this one move El Chapo that first scared is El Mayo turning and not Macho Prieto. Then he turned in El Ondeado, XX, and it just went on like that, for a long time. Up until where it hit the fans that he turned in El Chapo. And, eventually he would turn in his kid. And then, when it got reversed, it became a problem, and you guys are seeing it and playing out right now. But anyways, getting back to that, Arturo would eventually get killed. Because again, he got blindsided and he started being careless, right? And by this time, they went from doing something out of respect, right, to start doing a lot of shady stuff. For example, I don't want to get into details, but there was a niece of El Chapo, and he had family in Nayarit. A 5-year-old kid Arturo had picked up and skinned and left in a bridge in Becarranza, Nayarit. That's when they were known as the Mata Niños. Then they went off and they dealt with Nacho Coronel and his kid mainly, right? Not him, but his kid, which would later be what took down Nacho Coronel, right? But anyways, he would get killed for the same reason. He was doing stuff that was bringing heat to the plazas, and it wasn't good for government. Forget whatever they were doing, it wasn't good for government, period. So, after he left this, or Hector, or Lache came in, right? And it's how I want to tie what's going on nowadays. Elache, when he had power, his first-hand man wasn't Elache Dos. It was El Chapo Isidro Flores. which comes to when I got here, right? And it was an open war with these individuals in the state and with the H's in Nayarit, which I will get better into detail with. But anyways, I remember one time this individual, I'm not gonna jinx it or nothing, but like our family, as you guys are noticing, eh, he definitely despised my butt because I was so close in what was it in Maria del Oro, Nayarit. I had his sister's wedding, man. But anyway, that's not important. That's just the Zapato Ventura. But anyways, there's a personal thing there, and within time, I remember when they were torturing us in Nayarit, he was supposed to be busted already, and nah, the ones running the yard was plus Leyva and one of the sisters, and when they had us hog tied, he literally came around to check how they were taking care of us. You know, we're at a party or dance, you would see that individual. But anyways, again, that's not important. You know how government works out here, right? But in time, he would eventually get caught, and then that other cat, Carlos, right? And you stop hearing about it, right? Because eventually, Navarro would get caught, and everything will come out that he had a couple years informing the government. He turned in Arturo, and it was just, it's when things turn around where it became what you see nowadays. But anyways, literally, if you sit down and think about it, they were the responsible for everything that you see nowadays in Mexico. Just really sit down and analyze it. They started Guerreros Unidos, Los Rojos, Cartel de Acapulco. They, man, so many, right? But the only one that maintained, not just as an empresa, but Beltran Leyva to the fullest, to claim of Guasabes, all that little area, right, was el Fast Isidro Flores. But he maintained a way, because for one, families don't like him. Beltran is for the BS they did here in the state, right, where they stopped caring about boundaries. That is why he started the war, right? Because his brother got betrayed, which is understood, right? I'm not minimizing that, but nevertheless, he started picking up kids. He was starting to allow the Zetas to do it, most importantly. But then, due to him aligning with the Zetas itself, los Matacetas or Jalisco, the four letters started. They were the ones that took on Nacho Coronel. It just had a lot of history there, right? But just this last weekend, the Mayas were losing straight up, and they felt cornered, so they did an alliance with Chapo Isidro, one that is not respected by nobody here in Sinaloa. He was doing a lot of shady stuff, but this to bring him back to the state is, and now he has a lot more power because he still had a lot of Huevo y Morelos, Cabos. Like I said, a part of Sinaloa is. So that's why I mentioned my family these last couple of days. And it's been bad, right? Because Mayo continued going against the juniors, and this guy, the first people he wants to go after, as you guys seen, is the family, right? Which is Guinapa, Pontecillo, that all that area, as I mentioned it a lot of times, right? But we'll see what happens, right? But anyways, I hope I was able to put a little bit of base on these individuals. You know, you guys see how Culiacan is right now? It wasn't even nowhere near how it was at war with the Beltranes and what it took to get them out. Not just here, Nayarit, other states. For one to ally and bring them back in, I know for a fact the Jefe wouldn't have done it, right? But anyways, that's how it is. With this, I'll leave my story here. I hope I put base so I'm able to start once I hit Culiacan and you guys have a better understanding of how when I got there, things were so flared up, right? And we'll continue telling things. But with this, I'll finish the profile. Hope everybody rests well. Muchas gracias. Please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones.